to MACC Conversations, a workforce podcast from Metropolitan Alliance of Connected Communities. Interested in checking out more MACC podcast episodes? Listen in on Apple, Spotify, and Podbean. I'm Laurel Hansen, MACC's Program and Member Engagement Director. Today, we are fortunate to be joined by Sook Jin Ong, a well-known thought leader in our sector. Sook Jin is a consultant and coach, poet and storyteller with a background that stretches from the Humphrey School to Second Harvest to Nexus Community Partners and beyond. We're thrilled to have this time to connect our listeners with Sook Jin as we dive deeper into the intersections of rest, equity, and culture. Welcome, Sook Jin.
Thank you.
Hey, it's great to have you here.
Great to be here.
We have a long history.
Yes, we do.
But there's still roads to be covered, so I'm happy to be able to talk about this really great topic. You are moderating a conversation about organizational well-being strategies at our MACC 2026 Workforce Wellbeing Summit. That's a mouthful, but I'm so excited that our attendees are going to be able to spend some time with you on this important topic, and I'm really glad that today we have the chance to dive in a little bit deeper and talk about rest. As I've said, we've worked together a long time over the years. I've had the luck to work with you on a number of different projects, but help our listeners get to know you a little bit better. You're a lot of things. There's a lot to learn.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just really glad that we get a chance to do this, and thank you so much for inviting me to this podcast. I mean, I love the work of MACC, that's why I keep coming back, and really just grateful of the work of the incredible human services sector. I mean, truly, when we're talking about the heart of our societal well-being, like it is the human services sector. So glad that we're in conversation and community together, Laurel.
So tell us, I sort of teased it a little bit, but help us get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, like right now, I am doing work in my career really has been a lot around facilitating conversations that matter. I coach quite a bit in the work that I do. I'm also a poet, storyteller. Really, in my most recent work, rest is really that anchor point. So when you're like, hey, we have this the MACC Summit, really, if folks are not coming to the MACC Summit, please do. It's going to be such an exciting and important time for us to really center well-being. And you're like, hey, Sook Jin, will you facilitate this conversation on the second day around this topic? I'm like, yes. The answer is an easy yes for me, because I think more than ever, I mean, rest has been so important. But more than ever, I think really centering that and making sure that we take care of ourselves in this moment in time is so crucial. So, yeah, I'm just so glad to be with you all.
It's really, to me, maybe I'm new to the game, but it feels like it's just really been the last few years that there's been this sort of awakening to rest. There's an alignment. I'm curious, what is, when we talk about rest, what does rest mean to you? And has that definition changed over time? And here's where I think what we've really awakened to, was there a moment when you realized that rest wasn't just personal, but it was also political?
Yeah, great questions right there. Definitely. And I think, yes, the definition of rest has indeed changed over time. I think, in the past, I think just like many others, certainly in the conversations I've been privileged to have had, especially in the recent years. For me, it used to be a lot more like that textbook or dictionary definition of what rest looks like, right? That assumption of like, oh, rest means getting a good night's sleep or taking a nap, right? Which, are important for our physical body's reset. But now for me, it goes beyond that. Rest now for me means being seen for who I am, knowing that I can feel at ease in my body, spirit, soul, that I will not have to worry because of any factor of my identity, that I won't be able to be safe, to play, to be with my loved ones, or to
Mhm,
be in community, or to go to work or go to bed at night, right?
mhm,
Rest also takes on many different shapes now. For example, knowing that, you know, rights like paid time off exists because of labor rights that were fought for, so we can all
mhm.
take care of ourselves, that we should take it. And rest means listening to my body. So if I cannot say yes to certain things that are coming my way, also listening to who else might appreciate the opportunity to step up to say yes,
Ah,
right? Listening
mhm,
communally, right? On that
mhm.
level.
I love that. Listening
Yeah.
communally.
Exactly.
That's
Rest
great.
also means like going to therapy and healing wounds so that I don't have to keep carrying to untended grief. Rest also means gently putting down that phone and say like I need to sleep, right? So I think kind of to that second
Mhm,
question that you were asking, like when realizing that rest wasn't just personal but political, I think like
mhm,
that moment, especially during the pandemic, right, and the murder of George Floyd, like and at that point for me, like I was approaching a decade of working alongside human services workers at the nonprofit, county, and state level. It was kind of like that culminating point. The state of Minnesota was in this like deep reckoning. I was in a number of conversations, especially like those one-on-one quiet conversations, behind the scenes, months deep into like 2020, 2021. There were a lot of these conversations with friends, acquaintances.
mhm.
Folks would be like deep, deep in that chugging along, exhausted,
Right.
feeling like they need something to change but not knowing what to do, feeling like they just had to cling on and just keep going because the moment demanded it of them. And especially because at that point, if you remember that moment in time, it felt like everyone finally rallied behind, DEI or the cause, whatever that was, right? And I remember at that point, elders in, you know, like the much longer movements for change were saying like, yeah, we're seeing that, we get it, but they were also cautioning that we gotta take care of us because we have to build this for the long term. So they were excited, but they were also like, y'all gotta slow down, like don't just, you know burn ourselves out, right? And I
Right.
remember that moment thinking, oh, we are gonna crash if we don't take a step back and take care of us. And I think especially for the human services sector, we were so much in the front lines, just
Mhm,
pivoting, and not slowing down. Um, I think it was really that moment when I think that just listening to those elders saying you all really need to slow down or else we're gonna burn out hard. That was that deep moment of
mhm.
like, oh, we better do that now.
I love that. I love that
Yeah.
wisdom that, um, it was so important, and they had such a, I think, longer view of history,
Mhm.
um, and thankfully, people were listening, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
100%.
I get that. I get that it's self-care, but it goes beyond that, right? It's when we
Mhm.
when we just limit it to one's own self-care, it's just rest is just not destined to succeed. We need to really demand that the systems that we work in both recognize and respect the need for rest and the importance of it.
Mhm. Yes.
I'm glad
Exactly.
I'm glad you brought that up. You've led really important work in this field, so obviously we needed to talk to you about it. When you were at Nexus, in particular, you led an initiative, reclaiming our own time, Roots, the Root Fund, at Nexus for short. How how did that? Maybe you could just give us like a tidbit about what that was all about, and specifically how did it influence how you think about time, productivity, and worth, and what really resonated with you from that experience and the people that you worked with there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, reclaiming our own time or route, as you mentioned, was such revolutionary work that I got the privilege to be a part of with Rosalba Hernandez and Susana Morales. And we had this funding to build and test a pilot sabbatical program for BIPOC leaders.
Mhm.
And I think it's important to frame up the context of that, because from the get-go we knew that we were not going to be like the end all answer to everyone's rest, right? Because I think, sometimes there's this vision of like, oh, what could we do, and to be clear about what the intentions were. So we made sure that, beyond the part of the fund that were these sabbatical spots for BIPOC leaders that were, I mean, in itself, such deep, amazing gift for these 25
Mhm.
leaders that we were able to
Wow.
host through their rest journey. We also thought of ways to invest deeply into the ecosystem, the rest ecosystem, that consisted of healers of color in Minnesota, and also held and seeded, where possible, communal programs around rest. So one clear example, and this is something that many of you in Minnesota can access. There are many emerging and established healers of color that
Mm.
are bringing traditional and cultural healing practices to tend to the well being of our communities. And mind you, these healing practices are not only limited to surveying and supporting communities that they're from. All of us, regardless of our background, can access them and reach out to these healers for these services. One thing that we know is that these healers of color, tend to not get as much support or notice,
Mhm.
and they themselves are burning out. So, as part of
Mm.
our work, Rosalva, my brilliant, amazing co director, made sure that we created opportunities to heal the healers. So, it culminates in gatherings to ensure that the healers themselves get to come together in dialogue, exchange, and empowerment.
Mhm.
And through these relationships, we also made sure that we then hire these healers that we got to know through, like, for example, other programs that we led, like Reimagine Rest, that Susanna led, encourage our healers to consider how they value their work differently, and made a lot of informal recommendations to others that would approach us on who to work with. So just kind of in short,
Mhm. Mhm.
even though the work of Root has now sunset due to
Mhm.
funding shifts, I think back on these radical ways that we can go above and beyond in how we support our ecosystems. Like, how can we keep walking our talk, not just in a way that we physically resource through money, but how do we spend time with each other? How do we, with whom do we spend time and money? And even though when we think we have a fixed mandate for programming, how can you radically consider ways of reimagining your impact, right?
Mm.
Um, and I really do owe it that we got to do this, because I was with a team of radical dreamers and doers like Susanna and Rosalva. And so this is where it's like rest is possible when you're doing it together with others. And I know in our human services field, we have those radical dreamers and doers amongst us.
I love that. Are you seeing the rise of sabbaticals, or does it still feel does it feel attainable for individuals and organizations to pursue that?
I think we need to radically reimagine what that looks like.
Yeah.
In my time, I have at Root, I have seen people fund and rethink what that looks like. I think there's the more traditional way of like, oh, if I work X amount of years and prove my worth,
Uh-huh.
my
Uh-huh.
organization is gonna fund it model, right? And I think that
Uh-huh.
comes from the academia way of thinking about
Sure.
it, which exists out there. There are organizations that fund that, so it's great if you are in one of those organizations. But I've also seen a reclaiming of that word sabbatical.
Mm.
In my time of running Root, I have seen how, because we encourage people to like imagine if they do get the opportunity, what that looks like.
Cool.
Um, some folks are like, you know what? Even if I didn't get chosen for the sabbatical, the fact that I have dreamt it, I'm actually gonna go ahead and find ways to do it anyway. So we
Mhm.
have heard stories of people either self-funding it through other avenues. I've heard of people, coming up ways to like, oh, maybe if I can't do the whole thing, I might do this part of it. I might reimagine what it means to get some other forms of restfulness in my life by doing this or saying no to that.
Right.
S-
I
So,
um
mhm.
I like that whole idea of reimagining it because I mean, it's not very logical to be like, well, I've been here for 20 years and I'm totally burnt out. So now is the time. It's like
Mhm.
we really shouldn't have to like crash and burn in order to have access to those opportunities.
Mhm.
Right. We know that systems like capitalism and racism in our society, they do shape our relationships to rest. And I just really wanted to talk about, how does what does equitable access actually look like in practice? And is that a thing? Is there equity challenges to the practice of rest?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely do. I mean, ultimately these systems they shape the unjust, inequitable, broken backbone messaging, all the machinations, right, that we're
Mhm,
all working in, right?
mhm,
And unfortunately, they, especially for marginalized groups, right, over and over again, they tell us what our worth was, what our worth is, right?
mhm,
um I really consider myself still such a student, a newer person to this whole practice of rest. I
mhm,
owe so much of my learnings and lessons in this work, especially to the work of Black feminist writers, the Audre Lordes, June Jordans, Bell Hooks of the world, and many of you are probably like more acquainted with Trisha Hersey, or more well known
mhm.
as the Nat Ministry.
Yep.
Amazing, amazing work. Cole Arthur Riley, who wrote The Black Liturgies, is also another good one. There's a lot of great solidarity work that's coming up, that's more now told, right, and known, because like all these stories are being suppressed, right? Like
Mhm.
the systems don't want us to know that our communities have fought together, fought alongside, because to be shown and to show how our work together allows us to um, that we can work together despite our differences, means that we can rest together. It's like if I see
Ah,
you, fight for you, fight together,
I love that.
means that we both can have a good night's sleep, right? So it's like, I digress, but definitely these systems have their teeth in, right? Right now.
Yeah,
Um, and I think that it doesn't mean that, right now we don't deserve rest or cannot rest while we're trying to build a better world. We
sure.
definitely do. But it does mean that it might feel harder to access those rests while you're stripped of, say, that sense of restfulness, because you're worried that um, and I'm going to reference a much more recent trouble that a lot of us are, still thinking about or living with, right? If you're going to worry about someone showing up at your doorsteps during the times of ICE occupation, for example, or if you're worried about your neighbor who's going through the same thing.
Mhm,
But, you know, might there be someone else that can take care of you or your neighbor and their laundry, come stay watch, right? Like we have learned so much from this moment about
Truth.
neighborhood vigilance and care, networks that connect from block to block to neighbors to scale up. And this is where I think about how, we need a network, we need ecosystems, not individuals. The more interconnected we are, the more we're able to identify the who, the where in the ecosystem that's able to give, to nourish when we
Excellent
are
point.
in a depleted mode, right? I think about how the mycelial network, I know like this is not new to a lot of folks. Like if you follow the work of Adrienne Marie Brown and other living systems scholars, the whole network of underground fungi, for those who are newer to the concept of the mycelial network, it's the network that connects trees as a mode of communication and nutrient transfer, right? It's like the
Oh,
mycelial network transfers nutrients when they identify that, oh, there's a patch of trees that needs, a little bit more help to sustain their livelihood, so they transfer that stuff. So I think about how, especially in this moment of need, like we have done that here in the Twin Cities in
mhm.
Minnesota. We are the living embodiment of that. And
Oh,
so like I think about how, like, this one moment in January when I knew organizer folks in my immediate mutual aid network that were so depleted, supporting Asian Minnesotans that were deeply impacted by ICE, and simultaneously a few Black and Latina healers I knew were offering some impromptu pop up healing sessions for organizers of color. Like it
mhm.
was great to be able to say, like, hey, folks, like, I know that these folks are offering, some things here. If you need it, this is what's going on. So whether folks, did or did not go, it's their choice. But the fact that I could be like, hey, this is what's going on, like network transfer, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's like it's just a little thing, right? But that's like a really quick example. So
Yeah.
it's like we need to think and operate more like a mycelial network as an
Mhm.
ecosystem. We will be what each other needs. We ask for what we need and we offer in the spirit of what we can.
Oh, it's beautiful. And I appreciate too that how you called out the authors and writers and thought leaders who are sharing their wisdom. I think that's a wonderful takeaway that our listeners of the podcast episode today can maybe be exposed to some new voices. So thank you so much for bringing that. That's above and beyond what I expected you to share today. So that's amazing.
Awesome.
You talked about how human service workers and human service network is, it's our social safety net. It's the backbone of, and it's
Yes.
also that work can be so unforgiving, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and demanding. And we've all talked about secondary trauma and
Mm-hmm.
psychological safety and all of the things at work. How do you think organizations can really build cultures that honor rest without sacrificing impact? Because we're all go, go, go.
Oh, yes, that is so, so real. I think, especially in this moment right now where there's a lot of constant changes coming from all directions, I do not envy the leaders who are leading in this moment. So I'll start with that. I have deep empathy for you all who are leading human services organizations in this moment. It's immensely difficult. Um, I think we can all be incredibly real and human in this moment.
Mhm.
Um, so be honest when you don't have the answers. Listen to your employees, and with as much integrity as you can, um, be honest with that. Lead from your values. Um,
Mhm.
we're in a moment where so much is changing, as I mentioned. This whole perfectionism thing, right? I know
Ah,
that folks are familiar, hopefully, with the white supremacy culture traits. Um, that perfectionism thing, especially because it's something that it's been talked about a lot. It's like, oh, leaders are expected to be perfect and all that. Like, no, that I hope we don't subscribe to that anymore, right? Because it's really going to trip all of us up in this moment, right?
Mhm.
Especially if leaders are still thinking that they're expected to make decisions by pretending that they know it all, or they're expected to know it all in this moment of swirl. I think it will ruin all of us. Um, I don't think your employees expect you to know it all. Like we truly don't. I don't think we do. Um, Listen to your employees.
Mhm.
They may have insights. They may have input from what they are hearing from the ground as well. I think in this point that's gonna mean a lot. And also, it does not mean that by listening to everyone that it means meeting every single need or desire. But what that means is that you're meeting folks in this incredibly human moment in time,
There you go. Mhm.
recognizing that we are going through this together, and that your employees have made the choice to show up for this work, right? You can honor that part, right? We made the choice to show up together, right?
Mhm.
And I think rest ultimately stems from being seen, from being
Uh-huh.
recognized. Rest stems from feeling that sense of ease, that restful feeling. I think it's like being able to ask yourself as a leader, right? It's like, how can you create that sense in your organization in the midst of turmoil? So I think the impact will honestly come when people can just simply be.
Mm. Lovely.
Mhm.
You're filling some spaces I have that need filling today in this conversation. I appreciate
Aw.
that. Um, I have an interesting question to ask you, and I've asked others this question as well, and I'm curious how you'll answer it.
Mm.
If folks who are listening feel burned out but stuck,
Mhm.
what do you think is a small way that they can begin to reclaim their time? I love that saying, reclaim their time.
Yeah. Uh, I I have a lot of empathy for this.
Mhm.
It's something I struggle with as well. So for those of you who do feel this way, I send you my love.
Mm.
Um, I think particularly in the world of human services, I think our work is very full with what I call both hard work and head work. We
Yeah.
use our hearts a lot, right? Whether you think or you call yourself an emotional or emotive person, because you have to connect to the people side, right? Even if your job deals a
Mhm.
lot with policies or finances or legal, and you're like, I'm not a hard person, it doesn't matter. It's a very people driven sector.
Mhm.
And then we use our heads a lot because ultimately you still have to like figure out the policy side of things. There's a lot of changes in policy. There's like who qualifies for the what. You still got to write that email, make that slideshow, the
Mhm.
professional side, right, so to speak.
Mhm.
So lots of head, lots of heart. So that small way that you're asking, right? It's like when you're so burned out on the head and the heart side of things, as a first step, I think do something hands related.
Oh,
Uh,
I
yep.
wouldn't have thought of that. Say more.
Yeah. So I think about the two different therapists I've seen over different years. At the end of the day, it's the hands stuff that really helped me feel unstuck and helped me reclaim my time ultimately. Small, bilateral stimulation type stuff, right? It could be your choice what that looks like. So it could be that small walk, small short walk where you could just swing your arms
Mm.
more freely left and right as you do so. It could be junk journaling because you're using that scissors, you're cutting things out, you're just like sticking stuff, right? It could be visible mending. I know it's all the rage right now. People like to see things show up, and it's just like really cool. I mean, I'm not a, I'm not someone who could sew really pretty, but I just see things on Instagram and I'm like, wish I could do that. But that's like, you're using your hands, right? Or you
Yeah.
could dribble a basketball left, right, left, right. Um, Beading. I learned beading not too long ago, last year, from an indigenous beater, and that was just
Wow.
so fulfilling. And that's a lot of like stitching and touching, right? Or washing dishes, like that's very therapeutic for me. Like I know it might
Oh,
sound weird, but it's touching, a lot of like touching stuff. Or
sure.
tapping. Tapping is one that I learned from one of the healers that came to one of our sessions. Like whatever that activates that left, right of your body. And it doesn't have to be
Oh.
long, just a couple of minutes, whatever it is that works for you. Just so something hands related.
I think that could be worked into your day, and like you just mentioned, a dozen different ways and completely different ways. But I can totally see how that would make a difference in regulating your nervous system and
Hmm.
shutting down some anxious thinking, whatever it is that allows you to, add rest to your day. I think that's brilliant. I love that. And the list that you shared, it's like I'm feverishly jotting notes because those are great. I'm going to get a basketball out.
There you go. Yeah, give yourself the gift of hands.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Something you learned along the way that is, I think, shareable. That's wonderful.
Hmm.
Gosh, it has been so much fun, may I say fun,
Yes, I
to
love
chat
fun.
with you further. And I just really want to thank you for this deeper dive into the conversation around rest and restoration. And um, if if listeners are interested in working further with you, like how can they do that? What should they know? You've got such interesting clients, and you've worked with so many different cool organizations. How do people do that?
Absolutely, yes. You can reach out to me on my website, www.ongsookjin.com. I am very happy to recommend folks.
Mhm.
I am not shy from telling you if I'm not your person because there's so many
Right.
amazing people out there. Like I mentioned earlier that in my lifetime, I have been so privileged to just get to know all the coolest people out there. So, of course, more than happy to be like, hey, if I'm your person, great. But also, if I'm not your person, there is a person for you out there. And I'm not shy to tell you who might those people be. So, like, let's connect. The ecosystem is wide and beautiful and abundant, and you deserve the connections that you need to get connected to. So
Yes, amazing. Wow. Thank you again. This has been a delight, and we covered a lot of ground. I know people are going to really enjoy this conversation, and I look forward to continuing to work with you. And you've always been a wonderful support and to our network, Matt, the MACC network. And you talked about being a connector. You are definitely a connector. Thanks, Sukjin. This has been a terrific conversation. Appreciate our guest today, Sook Jin Ong, on the MACC Conversations podcast. Listeners, we also appreciate you. Thank you so much for listening. And don't miss our monthly podcast episodes. Find us where you listen to podcasts, places like Apple and Spotify, and the Podbean app as well. You'll also find our episodes directly on our website and in our member Workforce Digest. Do you have an idea for a MACC podcast guest that we should talk to? Go ahead and reach out to us. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day and be well. Goodbye.